Oh boy. I dared to go back on these apps, and I started chatting with one gentleman who was very good looking. I mean, so good looking that I was a little like, oh boy. And like, in other words, a lot of times that is the case where they don't always have much more to offer, which is a shame. And I didn't want to label him that way, and I did want to give him a chance, and let's see. And we chatted briefly, but he wasn't very capable of full sentences. It was clear that we were going to have one of these. And again, I don't chalk it up right away, but it's like, little alerts and flags. In other words, I also know that men tend to be a few words, but when they can't answer, like when I'm not shooting 12 questions, one question at a time. I'm letting you be, simple as simple. And so nonetheless, we didn't chat more than, I honestly don't think it was more than 2 days, maybe 3, but really not much more. And he asked for my number, and it was like, the usual line of like, oh, I'm not on these apps much, can I get your number? Which is such a like cheesy, cheap, like, save it. And so I was like, I don't like to exchange numbers. I've learned that lesson the hard way, right? I didn't say that to him, but it was like, I'd like to meet first once for coffee or for a walk, and let's see how that goes before we exchange numbers. And he wrote back, well, I like to get to know a person before I meet them. So I wrote, okay, I understand. I'm happy to chat here. And he sent back an emoji with sunglasses. Oh my God, I start to crack up. Oh, you're really getting to know me with that emoji and sunglasses, right? You asked some deep questions. And it's just, you can see what you're dealing with. And this is a gentleman he was closer to 60 than 50. And so, obviously it's like, okay, that's clearly it's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to raise a child or have to pull it out of you or like hold your hand. And at that age, if you can't manage having, conversations, then, and I thought, you know what? Here's the sad thing. He really is very attractive, if those are even him in the photo. I mean, they verify them, but who knows? But presuming it is him, I thought, it's kind of sad, because that's all he's really probably ever known. He was probably always treated like a piece of meat, and in turn treated others in kind. And that's probably all that was ever required or asked of him. And he probably has not grown other parts of him. He probably hasn't grown and matured in other areas to hold more intelligent conversations and have more depth to them. And it's kind of sad, because if he does ever wake up and become aware that he's not really tapping into his truth, his heart, and really opening up to share a true connection, authentic connection with another, he's already missed, likely a big half of his life, but I can't imagine he would live past 100. So, but then I thought, it's also a really good reminder for all of us when we see these types of interactions, these superficial, wanting just the surface, pretending they want more, but it's clear that it's pretend when there isn't, and, it's like I kind of felt bad for him, right? And at the same time, the good reminder of like, okay, this is good. Like that is not what I'm looking for, nor do I want to waste my time on it, right? These are the ideas of the red flags. Not that he's a bad person, not that he's whatever. He's just not my person, right? It's going to take a lot more than you're beautiful. And it is interesting to me that I feel like I've never necessarily had a type or a taste, right? Like usually people say, what do they, I think they say a type or a look, like it is more of a vibe or an energy. And of course there has to be attraction, but if you saw all the people that I was attracted to or had that energy with, I don't think any one of them look alike. So it's not like there's a thread or a whatever. That said, I have noticed that a lot of the really attractive men that have popped up on my feed, I end up it's like I'm not as attracted to them. It's like what I would typically call good looking. And again, that's a whole gamut, but traditionally like good looking, right? And a lot of times that's just because they have a symmetrical face and they just have, this kind of thing where you can't pinpoint it, but you can if you're like an artist, your eye ends up just seeing the symmetry and seeing whatever. And it's just, we all can, we just don't realize that's why we typically find others attractive. Nonetheless, it's such a weird thing where it's like, it's not repulsion. It's not, but it's also not, maybe I do have a little bit of oof, which is kind of funny to me, right? Like if you're too good looking, it's almost like I'm cautious that you're not much more than that piece of meat. And that's terrible, right? I don't want to be like that. So I do read them. And before I tell them no, if I even talk to them, but I just mean like before whatever, It is hard on these things, isn't it? Because that's all it is. We are judging based on a short interaction, right? Like looking at another, reading through their feed, seeing what kind of depth or conversation. You know what else I found interesting? There was somebody who I did not find attractive at all. But I did like what he had to say on his feed. And so it was kind of like the opposite theory. I thought, well, maybe if I met him on the street, like I would, sometimes that's the case too. Like when you meet people in person, it's like you're more receptive or something. Like sometimes they might not be attractive at all, but because there's a good vibe and you're enjoying them, or somebody introduced you to them, or all types of things, they can become more appealing, right? So I kind of had that mentality, like, well, you never know. Maybe if I saw him on the street and had a good interaction, maybe I would think he was better looking in that sense. But it was also terrible because I noticed I was also like, but I'm giving you a chance, so I expect like for you to step up your game. Like it's almost like because you're not that attractive, I do expect more of you. And so we started to chat. Oh my God, the man couldn't hold a conversation. He was like answering with one-word replies. And I was like, oh, you're going to have to do a fuck lot better than that. You're not even close to good looking. So if you don't have any beauty to bring and you have no brains, dude, what the fuck? And so it was a very quick chat, and I gave him a chance and still like short. Gave him a chance, still short. And I was like, okay, that's that. That is that. And I know this sounds so bitchy and so terrible, and who the fuck do I think I am? I mean, I'm by no means some model or of any, I'm not trying to claim that at all. It's just the reality of it, right? It's like, don't you want to grow all aspects of yourself? Don't you want to be able to hold an intelligent conversation? And sometimes that's more attractive than anything, right? When somebody can make you laugh and they can hold a really good conversation and you start to have a really good connection. If you just saw the people on paper, the one who's terribly attractive, dangerously attractive, could be the biggest fucking dud, and then you do almost get repulsed because you're like, oh, there's fucking nothing here. You are literally a meat suit. And then you have somebody else who you're like, oh, I'm really not attracted to them. But you spend a few minutes with them to a few hours, if you whatever, and you start to chat and hang out and laugh and have a good time and have really good conversations. And you're like, oh my God, this person is really attractive, right? You become more attractive when there's that substance there, which again, I know none of this is new news, but it becomes glaringly obvious when you're going through these damn apps. I'm kind of tiptoeing back in on this one. We'll see how long it lasts, but I would be so curious to hear other single people out there what your experiences are. Do you even bother anymore? I sometimes wonder. There is one gentleman I'm having a nice chat with. He seems like a gentleman. And there have been a few people I've met lately that it's nice. They're gentlemen. It's nice, like it's nice to have. It's like no pressure, nice conversations. They can hold a conversation. They have something to say. They're capable of asking questions. They're capable of banter. You know what I mean? Like things that we think are normal, right? Like things that it's like, God, am I asking a lot? But when you start to engage with so many people, you're like, geez, are my expectations too high? Right? It's funny because it's like, no, not at all. They're really not. As a matter of fact, it's like, if anything, I feel like it's low. It's like, you need to be able to hold a fucking conversation. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in and listening. You can now purchase an audio journey with me using the link below.